Rasputin versus Hunhow. To be honest, without the new war, it's impossible to scale Hunhow, and without Season of the Seraph, it's impossible to scale Rasputin. Now that both characters have shown their hand, who between the two is the greater machine god and who would win? Let's find out. Before we begin, let me lay down a couple ground rules. First off, Destiny and Warframe are video games. At the end of the day, they're always going to be video games, and nothing's going to change that. I like both games for different reasons. I will always like both games for different reasons. Just because one is stronger than the other does not change my opinion of where the other is, quality-wise. Secondly, under 50% of you, but close to that, are newcomers to power scaling. So we're going to keep the scaling to 5th dimensional and not go over. Most people can comprehend a power scale up until 5th dimensional, but most people will lose what's going on once you go past that. So therefore, in the spirit of the newcomers who just wants to learn who wins between the two, the scaling is going to be locked to 5D. We'll start with Hunhow. Hunhow is the leader of the Sentients, but most people don't realize where the scaling chain starts with Hunhow. The truth is, that goes all the way back before the Sentients even fought with the Tenno. See, Ballas wanted Margulis, she died, so he wanted Hunhow's daughter, Nata, when she came around. Ballas betrayed his people and sold out to the Sentients, and that's what caused that whole debacle to begin. From that time period, up until now, Hunhow has always considered Ballas an insect, complete and utter garbage to him. Even when Ballas got a major power increase with both of those Archon crystals that he stole from Nata, he's nowhere near Hunhow in power. It's seemingly only a finite increase above what he was before. And keep in mind, this same Ballas sentientified himself, if that's even a word, so he's partially a sentient. The problem with Ballas is his scaling comes from the fact that he stole power from the Lotus, and the Lotus could not even fight Hunhow. She was forced to seal him. Hunhow in his heyday would outscale everything. So, even the Ballas that stole all the power from the Lotus, along with Lotus herself, would lose to Hunhow. The reason why this matters is because the Lotus was being used to power Bergasa. Bergasa was able to steal energy from the Unam spirit, and the Unam spirit sees an infinite amount of timelines and encompasses them all. And there's a place called the Weave which transcends the universe. You can either call the Weave 5th dimensional because it transcends everything, or you'd see the Weave as yet another 4th dimensional space among the infinite 4th dimensional planes, meaning you'd scale Hunhow to infinite 4D. However, there is something else that's interesting in Warframe scaling. See, we have instances of 4th dimensional and 3rd dimensional spaces because there's pocket spaces. But how they work is there's a 4th dimension of sorts where people is able to store objects into. But it's in the form of a box within the 4th dimension where they store their stuff inside. And we know the Weave transcends the universe, which contains 4D things. So we can lean more towards 5D, meaning it's safe to put Hunhow at 5th dimensional. Now as for speed, because he outscales the Unam spirit, and the Unam spirit on some level transcends time, that's a measurable speed. Like, straight up. It should go without saying that he's pretty insane. For the 5th dimensional arguments Destiny uses, they're actually really easy to understand. You start with the Ascendant characters having a throne world. You'd scale the throne world to universal plus the low multiversal because it uses the equivalent of space-time that would be used to make a 4D universe, and because it contains the equivalent of 11 universes inside of it, it would be low multiversal. Once we start talking about characters like the War Priest, Crota, the Daughters, and Golgoroth, that's when we start getting into 5th dimensional, because they see everything below the gods as an inaccessible difference below them. This is because Crota outright transcends all Hive that are not gods. This being any throne world Hive that isn't necessarily in divine status. Oryx sees Crota and the other gods on a similar level as to how they see the Hive below them, which is he sees them as mere children and weaklings to him. Although the difference is seemingly finite, so we can't exactly just call it 6th dimensional because 6th dimensional might be stretching it. The reason why this matters is because this all goes back to Rasputin outscaling the Traveler, and the Traveler outscales every disciple and servant of the Witness, including all the Hive gods. To prove the claim I just made, let's refer to Nezarec. Nezarec was absorbing energy from a tree of silver wings, and this tree of silver wings downscaled from the Traveler. This means even if you said Nezarec absorbed 100% of the energy possible from that tree, he would still only be a percentage of the Traveler's power, whether that would be 1% or 5%. We don't know how closely Nezarec scales to the Traveler, but the point is, because of the nature of his revival and how he absorbed that energy, he inherently is capped below the Traveler. Meaning, because Rasputin outscales the Traveler, he would destroy Nezarec, and Nezarec, who's the strongest disciple, means that Rasputin could destroy every disciple, because they are below Nezarec, and Nezarec is below Rasputin. Let's look at their advantages. In terms of stats, Hunhow is actually stronger and more durable than Rasputin. The reason is, Rasputin doesn't work in the same way fictional characters work for power scaling. Rasputin works by manifesting himself through technology, and that technology can either one-shot his enemies or will be destroyed. The durability level of the technology depends on what we're talking about at the time, because there's a lot of context regarding Rasputin. So, Hunhow is stronger, faster, and more durable. However, Rasputin is more intelligent than Hunhow. The reason being, we have more intelligence feats to Rasputin, and within the hierarchy of intelligence for Warframe, Hunhow is lower than that hierarchy. Rasputin, however, is really high in Destiny's hierarchy of intelligence, and actively engaged with the snakes on a daily basis. So in return for Hunhow outscaling Rasputin, Rasputin would have the intelligence and processing speeds possible to account for that. As for Arsenal, I believe Rasputin wins both halves of the conversation. For hacks, I'm of the opinion that he's actually more potent than Hunhow, because if you cross-scale the sentience to the Vex by capping Destiny and Warframe at 5D, you'll notice that Rasputin inherently has counters to the Vex, meaning on some level he can inherently counter the sentience. While it doesn't fully apply to Hunhow, since he outscales and hacks as well compared to all the other sentients, this does mean that Rasputin can pose a danger to Hunhow should he concoct a strategy to scare him. For Arsenal directly, Rasputin has a wider arsenal than Hunhow. Between having the submines in the entire solar system, having revival using submine data, which can let him revive as much as he wants, having hypnosis, information analysis, along with all the war sats, Seraph Station, and Loki Crown, Rasputin should definitely have a wider arsenal of tricks to use against someone like Hunhow. Hunhow is not exactly lacking in terms of arsenal though. He has a physiology that allows him to adapt to attacks, meaning on some level he'll take damage from your attack, then the next time you hurt him it's going to do a lot less damage, and then the next time you attack him after that is going to be nullified. So He's able to ignore about 80% of Rasputin's arsenal, simply because Rasputin's arsenal doesn't have enough to get through Hunhow's adaptation. Ignoring the overwhelming stat advantage along with the adaptation, Hunhow has a decent kit himself. He has flight, meaning he can fly through the air and through space and go from planet to planet, which seems small, but because it lets him have free travel through the air, that lets him see what's attacking him from about any direction. Hunhow has a plethora of energy blasts, shields, melee attacks, you name it. He has everything that you see sentients do, and sentients can do a lot of stuff. Hunhow has about 20 or 30 different powers, however, it's going to take a long time to describe them and we're already far enough into the video. It's just that the main problem with him is we have not seen a lot with him. We've seen him when he's sealed, and we've seen him when he's unsealed. But we mostly have Hunhow when he's sealed. We've only had 1 or 2 showings of him when he's unsealed, but it was not a statistical feat. So we know he scales a lot higher when he's unsealed, and that's kind of it. Otherwise, let's move on to who I think wins the fight. I think Rasputin wins the fight, but it's going to be very high diff, arguably extreme diff. Let me explain. Hunhow has a staggering, overwhelming stat advantage, even inverse. Because we're cross-scaling Destiny to Warframe directly, we have to go with Hunhow just outscaling Rasputin outright. However, Rasputin's processing speed is several, if not hundreds of times faster than Hunhow's movement speeds, be it flight speed or combat speed. This means Rasputin has time to come up with measures and track Hunhow on the spot throughout the entire solar system, and come up with traps to lock him in place for longer than 10 seconds. The main problem Rasputin has is getting through Hunhow's anatomy. Hunhow's anatomy lets him ignore the majority of Rasputin's arsenal, but the main problem is there's a threshold attached. When you go past the resistance and or adaptation of the sentient, they can no longer adapt to your attack and take full damage. So if Rasputin were to fire a sustained full power Loki crown at Hunhow and do so for a very long time, he would be able to shred Hunhow's entire body and then kill him. While Rasputin has the ability to destroy Hunhow, the problem is Loki Crown has a charge time, and even if we use Rasputin's processing speeds as a way to get around the charge time, that still leaves Hunhow enough time to try to track down Rasputin and destroy him. So, we're looking at a battle that's probably going to last about an hour or two because of the anatomy of both these characters. Hunhow has the easiest ability to kill Rasputin before he charges the Loki Crown. However, Rasputin can destroy Hunhow using Loki Crown once it's fully charged. But there's another issue, however. The Warsats have to arrange themselves in position around Hunhow so that they can fire the blast needed to take him down. But that leaves one more debate. Can Rasputin lock Hunhow in place long enough to fire off Loki Crown? I think the answer is yes, and here's the reason. If you compare the psychologies of both characters, you notice that Rasputin is actually much more sophisticated as a philosopher between the two. This seems like a small advantage, but if you look at Rasputin's character, he's able to contend with characters who are on his level intellectually all the time and find ways to get around them. He's able to find strategies to beat people who would be supposedly unbeatable. Not only that, but when you look at Warframe, Hunhow is very single-minded and has tunnel vision within his character. What happened was he let himself get sealed because he had a single-minded ambition to keep his daughter away from Ballas and to keep his daughter away from the Tenno. What that did in the end was allow Lotus enough time and opportunity to seal Hunhow, and he's had regret about it since. So comparing the psychologies of both characters, we can use Rasputin being a more sophisticated entity between the two, despite Hunhow's millions if not billions of years of experience, to counteract Hunhow in a manner that lets him lock him in place with a strategy and then put him down with Loki Crown. However, should Rasputin fail to use Loki Crown, Hunhow has a pretty good chance of winning, although Rasputin could still pick up from the fumble and possibly get the win some other way. That's all I really have to say. This is a really interesting fight, and I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from with my take. Because if you cross-scale the two, there's a little bit of interpretation involved with who you think wins. So it's really interesting. Anyway, if you're new, please like, share, and subscribe. Liking, sharing, and subscribing, to my content really helps me out, and that stuff is what lets me grow as a YouTuber, and I want to get to 2,000 subs, because if we get to 2,000 subs, I got a witness video planned. Anyway, I hope y'all have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, and y'all are awesome. Peace.